I'm Peter Reinhardt, and we're back with Pizza Talk on Pizza Quest with Rob DiNapoli, our tomato guru, or our tomato yodi. We are we talked a lot already with Rob about the tomato industry, the background of where they're grown, but I really want to talk about something that is uniquely sort of an outgrowth of Rob's greater mission, which is in support of the artisan movement in general. Not just in the pizza world and in the cooking world, but really the bigger world that Pizza Quest has always been about, which is celebrate artisanship wherever we find it. And Rob, last year at Pizza Expo, all of a sudden I heard this phrase going around called "these hands." I got a little pin that says "these hands," and before I knew it, this thing was like going viral. And I traced it back, and I found out it all kind of started with you. Can you tell us a little bit about this movement, if you could call it a movement? It seems unofficial, but it seems to be growing into something more official too.
Yeah.
How did that all happen?
Well, a couple of things, Peter. First of all, I've got to shout out to some of the people that inspired me and helped me. Jeff Iacolo at the flour company at King Arthur Flour, and Noel Bronner at Slow Rise Pizza. He was great. Alec Wesson at Tomato Wellness. But really, I am who I am because of where I came from and my background. And, I can tell you, I think I mentioned it, my first, I lived in the cannery. We used to, when we turned 12 years old, that was the age in which we could now work at the cannery. It was probably more like somebody babysitting us for those, first few years. But essentially, I grew up in the canning.
It's funny that you said that, Rob, because John Arena said that when he turned 12 or 13, that's when he was allowed to make pizzas for the first time growing up in the pizzeria.
That's right. And of course, John was the influence for our pursuing these hands. But really what I wanted to say was the first 3/4 of my career were in the cannery producing, millions of cases of tomatoes. But, I'd never really met a chef. Our customers were Domino's Pizza, Little Caesars, the Safeway retail chain, Cisco Food Service. We were producing their label. So I had never really interacted with the chefs out there until we ultimately sold our company. We pursued that big bulk production, and it damn near sunk us. So we went out, found a partner, sold our tomato operation, and I decided to pursue the brand, which was sort of very secondary. The DiNapoli brand had been with us since 1938, but we weren't doing much with it. So I packed up my car with samples, and I would drive around and harass the chefs by knocking on the back door of a lot of restaurants. And it was working out pretty good for 4 or 5 years. And I would, I'd go down to LA and I'd drive back when I ran out of samples and reload and put more clothes in the car. But then somebody had mentioned Chris Bianco and this crazy pizza maker down in Phoenix, Arizona. So I took it upon myself to fly down there and drive over with one of my samples. And, it was interesting, and I think a credit to Chris. But, I was nervous, knocked on the back door, and Mark, his brother, Mark Bianco, answered. And I thought it was Chris. He had flour all over him, and back door of that little Adams pizzeria.
And for people who don't know, Marco is the one who really makes the dough.
For
Bianco,
and manages the live the starter. So he had his bucket of starter and carries around with him wherever he goes to all the restaurants.
He's the bread guy there.
He's the bread guy. Yeah, like you, Peter. You know about that. But anyway, he said, "No, I'm not Chris. That's my brother." And I tried to hand him my can, and say, "Oh, would you let him cut it, or would you have him cut it?" He said, "Well, Chris might look at it, but he really not going to pay any attention. He wants to see who's behind the product. So why don't you come back tonight and talk with him?" Well, it was at the time he was still making every pizza there, and then waking up at 5 a.m. to start Pane Bianco, in which he'd make some focaccia bread, split in half, and 2 sandwiches a day over at Central Avenue. So I was pretty sensitive about bothering him, but nonetheless, I found a seat at the bar, and next thing you know, we're making eye contact. Next thing I'm walking over there while he's hustling pizza and spouting out those great lines that he has, and looking around. And I was still quite nervous, but he said, "Why don't you hang around afterwards and let's talk?" So afterwards, when he closed up at 10:30, we sat at the bar there till 12 o'clock at night. And what he really wanted to do was to create something in California. Instead of going to Italy, which he has a high regard for, was trained there, but said, why do I have to go to Italy when California's got great product? He'd
By
already
the way,
sourced oh,
Rob, you were talking about that being there with Chris. Was that the first time you'd ever actually tasted a Crispianco pizza?
oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, that it was, and I gotta say, I still, I have a saying when people talk about the pizza, and boy, you must know all about pizza. I said, you're the artist. I supply the paint. I'm not a pizza maker. I love pizza, but I'm not a connoisseur of it. But Chris put me at ease, as he always does, and said, it's not about the best pizza. It's the best intention. And I think I try to carry that into the tomatoes. I'm not offended if somebody doesn't like our tomatoes. My intentions are the best they can be. I'm not saying my tomatoes are the best. So Chris, I picked up a lot of great things from Chris, but the main thing was he wanted to do something local. He respected the fact that we were 3 generations into the tomato business. He liked the DiNapoli brand, but he said, can't we do something really special? And 2 years later, we found a way to do it. And it's been a great ride ever since. And the reason I bring that up is, since that time, through Chris, he's given me an opportunity to meet some of the real artisans, whether they're famous or whether they're just getting started. But the passion that when I'm knocking on doors, and believe me, I've knocked on 1,000 doors showing a product, the tomatoes, I was just so impressed with the passion and the creativity and of the pizza makers, and how interested they were in the products that I was showing them. And this contrasting with my previous life, even though it was millions and millions of cases, I really didn't know about these folks out there until Chris and I really came up with a product that attracted some attention.
Really interesting, because it really opened up a whole new, not only a new community of people, but almost like a new or renewed vision of what you were all about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I've long-winded leading towards these hands, because so I became completely appreciative of those pizza makers and what they were doing with the product. But here I sat in July with the first tomatoes coming into the plant, and you look back from January, there was a whole nother group of laborers that were passionate about what they did. The grower, the processor, the quality assurance folks that I worked with when our family owned the cannery. Now I'm back at that same cannery trying to produce something special. And it was, I don't know, it was a unique perspective to look, to gain an appreciation for what people are doing with the product, and then how it got there. And I think that's when it hit me, when John Arena, bless his heart, he's giving a demonstration, asked me to attend and talk a little bit about tomatoes, giving a demonstration to probably 30 home chefs, passionate home chefs. And at the end of the presentation, he stands in front of them, as only John can do, as a lecturer, and said, to make a great pizza, you need 3 essential things. You need equipment to cook with. You need great ingredients to use with that equipment. And then he held up his hands. He said, and you need these hands. And I thought, how appropriate, not only for pizza makers, but all those hands that from the time the tomato seed was planted, put into the ground, harvested, delivered to the cannery, and then the truck driver, all these people. And I think back to Chris, they're local. They're our neighbors. They're the same people that are eating in my pizzeria are the people I'm buying and sourcing my ingredients from. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, how appropriate to try to shine a light not only on the creative pizza makers, but on all those hands that brought that ingredient, whether it's tomatoes or cheese or flour. And it was my attempt to shine a spotlight on all those people, because I really felt I've got a philosophy about the tomatoes. People ask me all the time, are they different? Can I tell the difference? And I don't know what to say. I think you can tell the difference, but I think part of my responsibility is to instill confidence with the chef that it's our best intention. And with that confidence, I believe they'll serve a better pizza. You know, we're just a small part of it, but with the confidence of knowing where the ingredients came, that it was done under the best intention, it was organic, it was done in a sustainable way, that they're going to be better chefs. And I felt the same way about that with growers and with the person sorting the tomatoes and checking the seams on the cans of tomatoes, that if they were part of the process, that they would just have the confidence to do a better job. So we spent a lot of time at the cannery and talking about our product and showing them the unique label and all that. Yeah, I've been blessed with a lot of great reviews and compliments and Instagram posts. I try to save them all and sit around and show the people that are putting the product in the can. And that's where these hands came from, is John and my perspective of seeing, you know, where the product comes from and where it goes. So
It's
that's
almost
what happened.
like you had an epiphany as to, you know, your own roots, and in a sense you pivoted your whole company and went back to your roots as an artisan producer, and then started connecting with all these other artisans. And then this brilliant idea that you and John and the others come out with, these hands as such a perfect iconic symbol of it. Where do you think it's going to go from here? Now you've done the hardest part. You came up with the brand. You know, it's like it's an idea that has tremendous potential. Where can this idea go?
Well, you know, it can go anywhere, Peter, and I think that's it. It's really. I just wanted to say something that I think is very important. I liken it to you know, I liken it to an AA meeting or an Al-Anon meeting. Nobody's paid. Everybody's there voluntary.
Yeah.
There's a couple of basic rules, but essentially take what you like, leave the rest, and let it develop and serve the needs of whoever wants to join. So we have a website, we have an Instagram account and Facebook, and with Noel and Jeff's help and a lot of other sponsors, we now have 12 sponsors have stepped up to try to bring together a few dollars to bring in speakers to talk about how they're using domestic ingredients, you know, their neighbors' ingredients to prepare a great pizza. So it's really, I don't know where it's going to go, but it won't be me. I mean, I'll help, but I'll just contribute what I can. And if people like it, it goes forward. If not, it goes in a different direction, but that's okay with me.
We should really enjoy these early days. This is like our Camelot moment with these hands. It's before it becomes, you know, sort of has an agenda of its own. It's forming its own agenda just by being a movement, and a movement that struck a nerve and a chord and touched people in a great and profound way. So it will be exciting, but like anything, you know, it's going to start to take on a life of its own. And you know, right now it sounds like this movement's not raising money for any particular cause. It's just raising awareness. Is that
that's it? Yeah, that's it. And I'm not. I don't have any preconceived goals or objectives except to be there and again shine whatever light I can on some of the people, the unique people. It's feeding my family. You know, the creativity of the pizza makers. I'm fascinated by how when I got started there were just you know, the pizza business, so you're going back into 1981 when I joined the firm, you know, the pizza makers were different than they are now. And the creativity of those pizza makers have provided opportunities like the Bianco DiNapoli or like, well, you know, some of our different members, Mimo Bruno at Di Stefano Cheese is now taking what traditionally had to be brought in from Italy, and now he's creating a beautiful mozzarella. And it's because this industry wants something great. They want it. Oftentimes they want it local, and the ingenuity not only of the pizza makers but those of us that are supplying those the pizza makers, it's provided a huge amount of opportunities for us as manufacturers. And the
pizza industry itself is kind of like the great river, and all these artisan threads are like the confluence of streams that feed into it. And it's and as you said, 30 years ago nobody viewed pizza this way. Now we're all of a sudden seeing it as, you know, as a tremendous reservoir of metaphor, of great
Yeah.
food, but also of potential.
Yeah.
And I really want to thank you for kind of tying those together out of your own experience, coming up with an idea that maybe an idea whose time has come, that in a sense symbolizes, where it's going and where it came from. It's like the hand and the fingers and the
Yeah.
spokes. It's
Yeah.
we could talk about it all day, but I think it's going to be real interesting to see, kind of how it all ties together in subsequent gatherings. So we'll get together every year at an expo, and it just launched last year, the idea of these hands. Each time we get together, it's going to have taken on a little bit more of its own personality and life.
Don't you? I think it's such a celebration of what I believe this country's about. I mean, to see, I remember, just as an example, Detroit style pizza. And I remember getting started and hearing about these two guys down in Austin, Texas, that they were doing this, all kinds of social media about these two brothers that came down, Zane and Brandon Hunt came down from Detroit. So I had just left Austin. I was flying home, and I'm looking. I said, "Damn, I missed them. Who are these guys?" So I called up a distributor that had our product, and I sent them over to the address. They went there twice. They go, "Rob, I don't know what you're talking about. There's nobody there. There's nobody there." And I got a picture of it. I sent it, and the guy looks at it, goes, "Damn, that's just a trailer. It was closed. I saw it parked right there, but I went over there at 10 in the morning. There was no way there. I didn't think that was via 313." And I just thought, how unique. And I know they aren't the only ones. I mean, Detroit's style pizza, but now people know about it. And who's the benefit besides them? Me, my competitor, the other tomato producers, the other cheese producers. People are consuming more because of the creativity, the no rules. Try it, listen to your customer, try it, and if they like it, go with it. Nobody wrote, you wrote a book on pizza, but you didn't say that was the only pizza you can have. You teach people.
I think that's part of what Pizza Quest has explored is how pizza went from one idea that we have in our mind to being a much bigger category. Via 3313 in Austin. I just had my first visit there recently, and I loved their pizza. It's wonderful, and that's Detroit style, but in Texas.
Yeah.
Right? So, which is a perfect, again, another example of how an idea that's too good to stay contained in one little village in Detroit.
Out of pans that are that were used in the auto industry, the blue steel pans. I mean, there's such a good story, and those stories are being created all the time. And somebody has an idea, like Chris had an idea that maybe we could do something special. And create something that wasn't there, an organic tomato from a single source grower. And I just think, it's just, that's the way it should be. If it works and people want it, give it a try. Here in America, you try something, there's not a rule against trying that you can do what you want until somebody tells you not to do it. And that's what I think has happened with all these great pizza makers.
And I think that's a great place to kind of like wrap things up for today, but you give me a great idea. Let's get Chris Bianco to join us next time. We'll continue the conversation, and we'll talk more about how you and Chris came together and essentially, there he is behind you now, and really created a whole new category within the tomato sector, and a kind of a new understanding of, quote, the artisan tomato, so to speak, and how it is, again, what would you say, injected a new spirit into the pizza sector that is constantly being reinvented as we go. So Rob DiNapoli of DiNapoli Tomato Products, thank you so much for being here today. We're going to continue this conversation. Thanks for all you've done to help kind of push the dial in what's possible in not just the pizza world, but in celebration of artisanship. And we'll see you on the next round. We'll see all of you. Hopefully join us again on Pizza Talk, presented by Pizza Quest. And we'll be back next time, and stay tuned.